maybe you accidentally find some tobacco just laying around, or
Zoom in on these guys.
maybe a little money laying around. You know, whatever. You can
find
tuck it up in that big tall hat.
Zoom in on them.
Yeah.
Now, people still think, well, I still think it's a big dumb hat. The hats these guys are wearing on the field, they don't make any sense. We're way smarter today. Well, for many years now, Canadian soldiers have wore a hat called a beret. Now, a beret doesn't have a brim on it, so it won't keep the sun or rain out of your face. It doesn't have a rain flap on the back to keep the sun and rain off the back of your head. It's made out of wool, so you sweat in the summer, but it's not wool like in a toque, so you freeze in the winter. What an awesome hat. And for many years, American soldiers would just wear a baseball cap, and Canadians would look at them and say, man, I wish we just had a practical hat like that. And then in the year 2000, guess what they gave every American soldier in the United States Army?
A beret.
They gave him a beret. So a hat that you freeze in the winter, you sweat in the summer, and you have that half-full look all the time on a sunny day because you get burnt right across your eyebrows from wearing a beret. But cool guys wear berets. Paratroopers wore berets. Green berets wear green berets. So you sacrifice a lot to look cool. Now, there's other parts to uniforms back then that we won't try to explain away. You have to think of generals and colonels back then, and maybe even today, like little kids playing G.I. Joes and Barbie. Don't ask them why they're dressing them up that way. They just thought it looked cool. And they had a whole ton of tax dollars to throw into it. So that's why we're going to give them an elaborate uniform. But of course, back then you didn't have different environmental uniforms. You got a red coat, a pair of trousers, a shirt, one pair of shoes, and away you went. That was your uniform, for the most part. So the night of June the 5th, they posted riflemen at the old Methodist church. And you would have thought, well, these guys are good. These are riflemen. This is a different kind of creature on a battlefield back then. Both armies had rifles. And a rifle has rifling. It's got grooves on the inside of the barrel that makes a ball spiral out. So a rifle is like a really good quarterback. A smoothbore musket is like a really bad quarterback. The ball just bumbles out, and you're hard-pressed to aim and hit anything. So a skilled rifleman could hit a target at almost 300 paces. That is if he could see through all the smoke. And there's two drawbacks to a rifle. They took a lot longer to load, and they cost a lot more to manufacture. So only the elite of the United States and British armies got rifles. And in Canada, they just gave the rifles to the native guys because they just made better snipers than the British fellas. Although Canadians were considered good marksmen.
I was in there like last week.
But the American rifle commander, after the fact, apparently told people that his men were tough fellas, but they were very ill-disciplined. They didn't follow orders very well. And they had a bad habit of just having a nap whenever they felt like it. Which apparently, on June the 5th of 1813, turned out to be a bad idea when 700 British redcoats showed up at the door of the church you're having a nap in.
I want one of those hats. I want one of the top hats with the fuzzy thing on it. Smells like rotten eggs. It's gunpowder.
So a nighttime attack is going to be pretty risky. Again, you don't have walkie-talkies, you don't have night vision equipment, you don't have flares you can shoot up. There's no ambient light at all. It is pitch black darkness. In fact, there's a lot of comments from travelers that you could travel from York to Queenston and travel almost the entire way completely in shade. that there were still so many old trees. There was lots of farms here back then, but there were so many trees along the old York Road and along the Queenston Road that you had a complete canopy of green over you the entire trip from York to Queenston if you were traveling in the summertime. So once the sun went down, you literally could not see your hand in front of your face. So that as the British approached, they were able to sneak up using that password they probably got from that Billy Green fella. They could sneak right up and take out the American sentries. Now they captured some of them, but others they bayoneted to get them to stay quiet. Some of the British troops even took the flints out of their flintlock muskets so there wouldn't accidentally be a discharge and give away their approach march through the woods from Burlington Heights to here at Stony Creek. So it really didn't matter if you had a bright red coat on or a bright blue coat on with a big white "Shoot Me Here" X painted on the middle of you, because no one was going to see you anyway. In fact, once the shooting started, they really went from where the muzzle flashes were. And a muzzle flash is a muzzle flash, so it's hard to tell whether it's a British muzzle flash or an American muzzle flash. And on the night, or in the morning, early morning hours of June the 6th, there was troops shooting at their own guys. In fact, it was so dark that night that some American cavalry charged into a group of soldiers, thinking they were British troops, and were hacking away at members of the U.S. 25th Infantry. So even in hand-to-hand combat, they couldn't tell who was who. A few years ago, an archaeologist did a study of some remains found on the battlefield here. And these men had suffered very close-range, massive wounds to the head, gunshot wounds. And what this may have been is not actually opposing forces shooting at each other point blank. It very well could have been. But what the archaeologists figured had happened is that the guys in the rear rank panicked, and in the darkness leveled their muskets and fired, and actually shot their friends who were standing right in front of them. But in the panic of battle, that's going to happen on both sides.
My back hurts.
The Americans have two generals in command of their army that night. A guy named Chandler didn't have a lot of military experience before the war. He was a blacksmith, but he had a lot of political connections, and he had some money, so he's a wealthy blacksmith. So he quickly rose up to become a general. The guy working next to him is a fellow named Winder, William Winder. Winder, he's not having a lot of luck in the War of 1812. The year before, he'd been in a battle near Fort Erie, Ontario called Frenchman's Creek. He was supposed to destroy the bridge over Frenchman's Creek, but conveniently forgot all the tools for doing it in New York and had to return because he left the kettle on and left all the tools back in the States. The riflemen have been overran. And they're not stopping, they just kept running. So the Redcoats now have the high ground across from the Gage Farm. The American commanders have got to get their men formed in the darkness.
So there must have been a church over there who done
So General Winder doesn't do a very good job at Frenchman's Creek. He's not going to have a good time at Stony Creek, because in the darkness, he's going to wander into the British and get captured. But never fear, his military career will continue. He's released, he's sent back home to the States, and the next year, in 1814, he's given command of the defense of Washington, D.C. And of course, the Redcoats went in and burned down Washington, D.C.
I feel like
So you'll see that they'll try to fire in volleys. There's some good reasons for doing that. When your friends are all firing their muskets and there's flames shooting out the front of the gun, they also shoot out the side of the gun. So if you're loading your musket by tearing off the end of the cartridge with your teeth, and the guy next to you shoots his musket off, your round could blow up in your mouth. Now it won't blow your head off, but it's going to leave a mark. So you try to fire together as a group, it's safer. And if you get everybody firing together, it starts to sound like a cannon going off, so it has a psychological effect, sends a wave of bullets downrange. And in the smoke of battle, you can tell what kind of soldiers you're facing. If it sounds like popcorn popping, they're probably amateurs. They're just militiamen. They're not well trained. But if they're crisp, disciplined volleys, that means you're fighting regular army troops.
when the shoots come out.
So in the close-range fighting that night, not only did General Winder get captured, but the American overall commander, Chandler, he falls off his horse. His horse gets scared, throws him off. Chandler gets back on his horse, heads back down King Street towards his gun position, but he's got a little problem. The redcoats have overran his cannons, and he gets captured. So now both American generals have been captured, but the British aren't having much luck either in the darkness. As they advance, they're illuminated by the American campfires. And in those red coats now, they can be seen. Of course, their general doesn't have any luck. General Vincent that night, he gets lost, falls off his horse, gets knocked out. They find him stumbling around in the woods the next day. So this battle comes down to handfuls of men blasting away at each other at point-blank range without a lot of leadership. One of the red-coated officers, a guy named Plenderleith, realizes that those cannons are the key to the battle. And there are two brave Scottish fellas in one of the British regiments, the 49th Foot, the Fraser brothers. Alexander's a sergeant, and his younger brother Peter's a corporal. And along with Major Plenderleith, they charge the guns and capture them.
That lady's head is in the way.
So now the Americans don't have the advantage of artillery,
Move your head.
but now they're hammering away at the British who stormed and captured their guns.
And they're going to speak over the rail in between those.
That lady talking.
So again, if you're fast and you stand up, you can fire your musket 4 or 5 times a minute, which sounds incredibly slow, but the guys on the other side don't have any advantage. They're firing just as slow as you are.
Watch me point your camera.
God, you should get the outfit. Oh, never mind.
I'm getting them pretty good down there. Okay, here we go.
Contestant still to this day, as a matter of fact.